Hey friends, Don Wilson here working on a little experiment. Some of you may have heard that I'm working on recreating the Berliner Zinc process disc, and here we are. So far, I bought some zinc bullion, melted it down, made a nice disc, and then spent an incredible amount of time milling it flat, grinding out imperfections. Had to go from 80 grit, 120 grit, 220 grit, 500 grit, 1000 grit, 1500 grit, and then polish it out with fine cutting compound. It took absolutely forever. If any of you are crazy, stupid enough to recreate this on your own, I highly recommend that you just buy some sheet metal. If you live, you learn. So the second part, there's the wax coating, and fortunately there's great documentation for the wax coating. A little laborious, but also kind of mindless. It's just measure out half a liter of ether. Did that a little while ago. 35 grams of beeswax. I used yellow raw beeswax, ordered it online, little pellets. Easier than shaving it, as Berliner had written in his instructions. And then it specifies to mix them cold. I don't know why it specifies to mix them cold, other than that ether evaporates at a really low temperature. So I don't know chemically if it makes any difference. I don't know why it would. But a little chilly out here today, and doesn't dissolve real easily. I've been doing this for probably 10 or 15 minutes now, and we can still see that there's quite a bit in there. This ether is crystal clear, so there's been some that is dissolved. From here, a clear layer forms on top, and that clear layer on top is what we're after. That's what the disc will get coated with. So I'm going to keep shaking this up and then let it all separate out, and we'll continue from there shortly. Okay, so I took this ingot of zinc. It was 1.5 of these guys. These are 5 pounds a piece. I took 1.5 of these and melted them down to make the 8-inch plate that I'll be cutting later. And then the other half of the one I polished up and gave it to my neighbor and told him it was silver. I later told him the truth. So I just put a light coat of the wax solution there, as you can see, and then gently scribed a line down it using, actually, that's a lie, I used that machinist's ruler. And this red solution is just for test purposes. So this is the part that I'm not able to find the exact formula, but to 25 milliliters of water in this centrifuge tube, 25 milliliters of water, 7 grams of concentrated sulfuric acid, and 1 gram of potassium dichromate. The potassium dichromate is supposedly to inhibit the foaming, the hydrogen off-gassing that's formed from the reaction with the zinc. And as we can see, there are some bubbles, but not a significant amount. So the next question is, where did my needle go? That needle was here just a second. Oh, that's the problem with magnets. It's a magnetic stir plate. So I don't know if this acid solution is strong enough or dilute enough, or for that matter, if there's too little or too much potassium dichromate. So I'm just sitting here gently going across the line etching an acid and seeing if it's deep enough. It's been 2 or 3 minutes, and as you can see, there's no catch. There's that line is strictly in the wax, and the needle just glides right over it. But now in the acid solution, hear it? I don't know that the needle would properly track in it, but it is enough to make a tick noise. And you can see that after I've done that and have disturbed that wax area, that now the acid is starting to attack the zinc there as well. So I'm going to do a couple more experiments and revise this acid solution, and after I've got some better results on this bit of bullion, then we'll actually get to cut the disc. So I'm still at it. This is day 4, 5, 6. Who can keep track? Mr. Berliner's instructions were to create an acid solution that even after 10 minutes that there would be no bubbles. The problem with bubbles is that they create really jagged irregularities in the grooves. So he suggested pure chromic acid or a mixture of sulfuric acid and potassium dichromate. Even a higher grade of chromic acid than he had available in 1890 weren't able to get the job done. Just had no effect on the zinc. And the sulfuric acid with the potassium dichromate, even a saturated solution of potassium dichromate, still created a lot of bubbles. I don't know why. Generally speaking, he was pretty spot on. However, playing around with mixtures of sulfuric and chromic acid, I've found that so chromic acid is a red flake. It's a solid, so 25% solution of that in 75% water. And then to that solution, add 5% sulfuric acid. And so far that seems to be working the best, and I have a feeling that's what I'm going to actually end up using. Okay folks, so you've seen all this crap before. There was the solution, the acid solution decided to go with, and there it is. Berliner mentioned that it was cloudy, but again, with the purity of the chemicals these days, not cloudy. And the beeswax solution came out to be about 100 milliliters of this nice clear beeswax. I did have the advantage of a centrifuge. Then it gets diluted again, 50-50 with ether. 2 coats are simply poured over the disc and allowed to dry. And that's what I've done here. I'm going to give it another couple minutes. But in another minute or two, I'm going to get ready to cut this. Okay, I decided to cut at 33 RPMs because there's some low spots in the zinc disc, and I was worried that it would damage the cutting head. So we're cutting at 33 RPMs, and I have it set to just scratch through the wax, and you can hear the stylus just riding on the zinc, but there's no zinc shavings coming off. The spindle isn't long enough to go through this thick disc and make it into the mechanism for the feed screw, so I'm holding this, and I'm not going to be able to keep recording because this is pretty, well, needs to be held really still. But here we go. The first zinc recording in probably 120 years. It's only been about 2 minutes. I don't really know how long to do this for. The acid solution is an unknown variable, and there's no mention except anecdotal references to the artists after having recorded that Berliner did this for a couple minutes. So I have a feeling after 5 minutes maybe, I'll give it a quick rinse and take a look at it under a microscope. I have no idea if I stopped at the right time, but at a certain point, seeing the grooves darkening just felt like it was time. Total elapsed time was 3 or 4 minutes, and I literally just now wiped it off with some solvent. We can see that the beeswax did a really good job. You can see the sky and the trees. After wiping off the beeswax with solvent, what I wrote in pen remained. So that must be exactly how the artist's autographed. If we look at the back, which I protected the perimeter just to do some test cuts, yeah, that's what the acid solution did to it. And the grooves kind of looks Berliner-ish. So there was one problem. The dash pot little hydraulic damper on the lathe was causing it to skip over this depression. So I quickly disconnected the dash pot and was able to cut through the rest of the way. So that first 1/4 inch is no good, but we'll try the rest. So what went wrong, guys? It was the acid solution. When I took the disc off after that test play and put it under magnification, saw that it was all full of air bubbles. So that's exactly what happened. Is as acids react with anything that they react with, the acids always start with a hydrogen at the very front. It's what makes them an acid, and that hydrogen is easily liberated, and in this case it was stuck in the grooves, and looking at it, it was just full of bubbles from the off-gassing. So we know that the acid eats the zinc, and we know that the beeswax protects the zinc, but gonna have to work on that acid solution, and also order some sheet metal. Trying to use that bullion in that thick plate was just ridiculous. So I certainly enjoyed this. This was a lot of fun. I hope you did too. It was a wonderful learning experience, and be sure to look for updates, because there will probably be another attempt in another few weeks or so. Thanks for watching.